with you. I'm in heaven, baby. Tonight, I'm yours. Any way you want. You got me high with the way you move. Each time you call, you don't have to worry. You know I come just to be with you. You hide, I'll see, run until I get you. I'll make you strong. Like
All right. Enough of that.
Man, oh man, oh man. These stories about R. Kelly just keep popping up. New crap every week. Now, this hangout is for you niggas who don't like to read. Because I have come across a statement, a document that is about one, two, three, four, 5 pages long. It has a ton of words, and I know how some niggas don't like to read shit. So if you prefer to listen to a book be read to you, you know, there are people who purchase audio books. They rather listen to somebody read. Yeah, okay, whatever works for you. But again, if you are one of those niggas who just hate reading, like it'll kill you to read a page or something, then this live stream is for you. The headline is, and I'm getting this from Unwind with Tasha K. That's her website, unwindwithtashaK.com. You can go there, UNWINEWITHTASHAK.com. It's all one word, unwindwithtasha.com. She has this headline as a statement that says, London on the Tracks mother. London on the Tracks is a person. Her mama, Cheryl Mack, says R. Kelly made his oldest daughter dance for him and his friends. Well, table dance. That means he made his oldest daughter get up on a table and dance for him and his friends. Now, this is the link to her statement on Unwind with Tasha K's website. I have clicked the link. I only read like the first few lines. Well, maybe the first paragraph and part of the second. And I said, you know what? I need to go live and read this live for all the niggas who hate to read. So like to hear it? Here it go. It's going to be new to me, just like it's new to you. It begins as such. During my term with Robert Kelly as a friend and as employee, okay, I witnessed sex, hostility, snatching, grabbing, groping, drugs, alcohol, and bipolar behavior, all from a man who could write a record better than he could spell his name. That's a hell of a way to begin a statement, don't you think? I began my journey with Robert professionally in August of 2005. That is 13 years ago. Prior to that, there was just cordial conversation. My first visit to Robert's studio was in 2005 with my artist, Sherry Hawk, who now travels as background vocalist for Tamia. Now, 2005, that was 3 years after the allegation of him pissing on a child, and probably about 3 years before he actually went on trial for pissing on said child. So just keep that in mind. This is 2018, and Shelly Mack, was that her name? London on the Tracks. Her mom is just now making statements. Okay, but I digress. Let me move on. Robert invited Sherry and I to his chocolate factory studio located in the basement of his Olympia Fields, Illinois home, foreclosed in 2013. I'm reading it as it says. I don't know why you got to put the man's business out there like this, but okay. We arrived there with the intent to play music and get direction. But we ended up there for days in the studio with Robert at his request, watching him create. There were numerous girls of all ages in and out of the studio at all times. Some waited for hours and some came right in and were introduced and would ultimately disappear. There were many. All of them were very, very young. Sherry, in her early 30s at the time, didn't seem of interest to Robert, but he loved her voice and said she was very impressed with me as her manager and wanted to give her a shot at recording records for other projects. She recorded several records, and one of which he actually selected for his album Double Up, the album did very well. We saw credits, but there was $0 in compensation. Sherry was featured on the album singing a duet alongside Robert titled Having a Baby. Robert never possessed any further activity with Sherry after that and said he wasn't going to make the song a single. So Sherry lost interest and moved on with other supporting act opportunities with Brandy, Kelly Price, and ultimately made her home with Tamia. Sherry and I parted ways, and I continued my working relationship with Robert. During the early visits with Robert, I was introduced to his staff of engineers, and I became a staple piece. He referred to me as his sister. I met Robert's kids on the first visit to his home. He seemed very close to the children, and this is during the alleged porn court case period. And there was a very close relationship with Joanne, his oldest daughter, now 16. Joanne was around more than Jaya and Robert Jr. She was a dancer and always danced at Robert's request for his guests. It was uncomfortable. There was one late night party and Robert had her dancing on the pool table for his guests. There were older men present, mostly staff. This was awkward. He cheered her on, and it seemed as if the guys were afraid to clap or even look at her. She was young, and it was inappropriate. Robert made sure that everyone knew my name. Jeff the engineer, Abel Garibaldi, the in-house engineer, Ian Morenes, also the house engineer, Donnie Lyle, music producer, ran the studio. The studio was open around the clock, and Robert recorded after midnight and into the mornings every day. His days began around 4 p.m. with him making rounds with his guests and ultimately ending in the studio. I was always invited to every event, costume parties, dinners, house parties with themes, five-star parties as they were called. I was there for video shoots and actually appeared in videos. This was never a paid opportunity with Robert. Our agreement was that if I found an artist opportunity, I would bring it to him first. During that time, I never felt fear of Robert. It was a simple understanding. I worked a corporate job by day and traveled to Chicago on weekends. I traveled at my own expense and did so for several years. I introduced Robert to an artist that I began working out of Atlanta, Dawn. She puts Dawn in quotes. So whoever this artist is, she decided to protect her and just call her Dawn. I was shopping her project and getting interest when I played her music for Robert. Robert requested pictures and video of Dawn, and when I showed that to him after loving her voice, he invited her out at his expense. Dawn was early 20s at the time. When I flew her out, she brought a girlfriend um, with her, Angie. Robert met Dawn, loved her, and invited her repeatedly, then without me. Ultimately, after a few more visits for parties and no studio time ever, Dawn stopped visiting Robert. All righty. This all went on for a while. In 2009, I began working with a female artist, Precious Way. Precious was 17, originally from Chicago and living in Atlanta at the time. Precious was very excited about me as her manager. And when I told her that when I told her and her mother that I had a great relationship with Robert, they both wanted to meet him and showcase Precious's music. That was an easy task. I called Robert and told him about Precious, and he invited her and her mom out to Olympia Fields. I covered the cost of the air and hotel for all of us. And when we arrived in Chicago, we were invited to the home where there was a get together. She has get together in quotes. And there was a basketball game on the court at his home, and the bar was open on the lawn. Precious and her mom, who are both Chicago fans of Robert's that never even came close to meeting him, it was beyond their wildest dreams. Robert was very cordial and respectful that night. We were his special guests. He seemed smitten with Precious. She was young, and this hadn't happened at this point in my presence during my stint with Robert. That's the way the sentence went. I don't get it either. I'll read it again. Robert was very cordial and respectful that night. We were his special guests. He seemed smitten with Precious. She was young, and this hadn't happened at this point in my presence during my stint with Robert. Seems like she left something out. We were invited into his studio, and there we sat, listened to music, and shuffled through pictures from Precious's portfolio. Precious asked that with Robert's approval, Wait, Precious asked, and with Robert's approval, went to the bathroom down the hall while her mother and I waited in the studio. During their absence, Robert faked a phone call, went to the bathroom, and escorted Precious into his theater room next to the bathroom. Once he had Precious in the theater room, he locked the door and began his sex act with her. She was a virgin, scared out of her mind that if she didn't allow him to have sex with her, that he would refuse her project and disappoint me in the end. In that room, they exchanged phone numbers, and when she returned to the room, she seemed nervous and disengaged. He appeared a few minutes later. We resumed as if the sex trauma never happened. Her mother and I were totally in the dark of this happening. Precious and Robert became very close. They would talk for hours on the phone, and her mother and I were clueless. He told her not to tell me that they were talking offline. She was so afraid of Robert. This went on for months, and Robert ultimately agreed to make this a chocolate factory project, and he allowed me to oversee the project. Precious took a firm liking to Robert. Robert would ultimately put Precious up in a hotel a little less than a mile from his home at the Country Inn Suites in Madison, Illinois. He would extend the room daily to keep her there. And I hope y'all don't mind me pausing and presenting some commentary, but is that a little confusing? The child went, said she was going to the bathroom. He takes in the theater room, performs some sort of sex act, but she was afraid of disappointing her manager, and she was afraid of Robert, but yet she took a firm liking to Robert, and she allowed him to put up in the hotel. Okay, listen, please don't misconstrue me questioning what I'm reading as me being a supporter of R. Kelly. The only thing I support concerning R. Kelly is him doing whatever he's doing with consulting adult women. That's it. But, hey, I question everything. And I don't believe everything I hear and read. Things have to make sense to me. And what I just read, it's conflicting, to say the least. Or at best, whatever. All right, I'll continue. Robert requested a writer for Precious to get her music going. He allowed me as her manager to oversee the project. I hired engineers and songwriters for the project. And there were times when he would yell at Precious about what she would wear to the studio, and she would cry out of fear. She said that he would beat her at the end of the sessions. He would buy her costumes and make her dress up and videotape her. She was forced to wear high heels and tutus with hair bows and lollipops to complete the costume. I scouted a writer from Atlanta in January of 2010. Her name was Venetia Andrews. Venetia was an inspiring writer. She was in love with Robert the first day she met him. He wanted to meet her without me. He said he wanted to do so because he needed to make sure she was in it for Precious. This was also part of his scheme. He met with her alone, and after the first night, he called me and said, "You the shit." She was 19 at the time. Robert began playing Precious and Venetia against each other until it got to be too much for Precious. Robert had me overseeing the project and proposed a co-management arrangement for both the girls. And he had me doing all of the work, and he would come in at the end of every session to check the progress of the Venetia's writing and Precious's vocals. I hired an engineer by the name Dwayne. She has Dwayne in quotes. He was also a producer and he was present for every session with the girls. Precious was very afraid of Robert. She would almost tear up when she knew that he was on his way to the session. Okay. Hey, I began to fear what she feared. This went on for quite some time, and Robert ultimately stopped her sessions. By now, she was in a Hampton Inn hotel in Madison, Illinois. I was flying in and out of Chicago. The sporadic sessions didn't suit me from a cost perspective, and there was no money coming in. He wouldn't allow her to work out, leave her room, or even speak or see her mother. It got really out of control. Really. Precious's mother was fed up. Robert had by then forced Precious to have an abortion, beat her like a child, forced her to wear makeup to cover up her bruises, remain silent about it, stay in her hotel room, not speak to her family. She was scared. They hired attorney Susan Loggins, sued Robert a few weeks prior to his Africa date as opener of the World Cup. He called me in, put fear in me, told me that I needed to pick a team. He said that people get killed for being involved in this kind of thing. I feared for my life. Robert had people around him that he threatened to handle me if this got out of hand. He forced me to visit his attorney, Ed Jensen, where he prepared Jensen. Ed was already prepared for my arrival. He had a series of questions. For every question, Ed prepared me for a shakedown and other legal scare tactics that I didn't know. I was more afraid for my reputation in the industry and how things were playing out. Precious won her lawsuit against Robert, and the case is sealed. The case was based on sex with an underage minor. There's video footage on file of Robert's multiple entrances into Precious's hotel room, collections of Robert's fingerprints and semen from her undergarments and bed sheets, all collected and used in support of the case. Robert continued his life with Venetia, and she lives as one of Robert's main girls. I recently moved all of Venetia's belongings from a condo at Buckhead Grand here in Atlanta that was in my name to the new guest house in Duluth, Georgia. In 2013, 2014, Robert asked me to locate Precious, and I did. He offered her a visit to Atlanta. She accepted. Is this after the lawsuit? It sounds like it. So after she sues him, after collecting semen in her undergarments and the bed sheets in the hotel and sues him, he invites her years later and she accepted. And this so-called manager, after knowing all of this, she arranged, as it says, I arranged a visit and they picked up where they left off. What? Precious revealed at that time that she was still in love with Robert, and her life was so damaged that she didn't even know how to function with other men after being in that scary relationship with him. Okay, all right. Where am I? I made the contact with Precious for Robert because I was afraid not to. He would have forced her to take her clothes off, and he completely undressed in front of me and forced her to have sex with me sitting there while she cried doing so. What? Y'all want me to read that again? I'm going to read it again. This lady writes, I'm going to start it again. I recently moved all of Venetia's belongings from a condo at Buckhead Grand here in Atlanta that was in my name to the new guest house in Duluth, Georgia. In 2013, 2014, Robert asked me to locate Precious, and I did. He offered her a visit to Atlanta. She accepted. I arranged the visit, and they picked up where they left off. Precious revealed at that time that she was still in love with Robert, and her life was so damaged that she didn't even know how to function with other men after being in that scary relationship with him. I made the contact with Precious for Robert because I was afraid not to. He would have forced her to take her clothes off. I'm reading it just how it's written. He would have forced her to take her clothes off after he completely undressed in front of me and forced her to have sex with him, with me sitting there while she cried doing so. He appeared happy and smoked a cigar afterwards, told her that if she wanted to be an artist, that she had to learn how to be free and not so timid. She put timid in quotes. She was humiliated and ultimately realized that he hadn't changed. She told me later that he continued to hit her and yell and force her to do things sexually that she would never do, like finger him anally and speak of her finger as a penis and ask him if he liked it. She said that was his most satisfying moments with her sexually. You probably saying, what? No, I ain't gonna read that shit again. I'm moving on. You want to hear that? Rewind. I'm not reading it again. In November of 2013, after Robert decided to make Atlanta a second home, I began to work with both he and Devin on their joint venture of businesses. So after all this sick shit you just witnessed, you still continue to work with this dude. And now it's 2018 and you spilling I'm sorry, excuse me. Let me start again. In November of 2013, after Robert decided to make Atlanta a second home, I began to work with both he and Devin on their joint venture of businesses. The goal was several companies that included a record label. Robert and Devin agreed on company splits and things were in motion. I had no clue initially that Robert's plan was skewed. He told me on a sprinter ride that Devin had what he wanted, charisma. She has charisma in quotes. And that was something that he didn't possess naturally. He then began his Atlanta mission. He needed an attorney to draft the documents for the business, and he specifically wanted a Chicago lawyer. I scouted a few, and after a recommendation from his A&R rep at Sony/RCA, Wayne Williams, Linda Mensch was the candidate hired for the job. I reached out to Linda personally, set up an appointment in LA, and after meeting with her, I scheduled a meeting with Robert. We all sat down. He liked what he heard, and we ultimately hired Linda on the spot. Robert introduced me to Linda as his longtime assistant and advised her to do everything through me. I spent months ramping Linda on the various processes and procedures of the Kelly business. I spent countless hours during the day working alongside Linda, phasing her in while phasing out Gerald Blackie Jones and Darrell McDavid, former business managers. Linda never wanted to get involved with Robert's personal business, but there was no way around it. She knew of his past and always suggested to me that he should find a comparable mate. Linda and I needed help as the business was starting to grow. um, Something named the company, hired Linda, hired a book company. Hired a bookkeeper, a friend of Linda's, hired a stylist, a firm of mine. Robert ultimately played us all against each other, Devin included, in order to justify not paying any of us except Linda. Linda ultimately paid herself and carved my and Joan's salary as a business management team salary, thus the $10,000. The salary was not in place until July 2014. Up until that time, I was basically working for free, hiring and building the company, RSK. Robert received $2 million from a tour booked by Devin and never offered Devin or myself a dime. I have the bank statement of incoming cash and outgoing expenses. When things started to become more structured, Robert began to change his attitude towards Devin and I. He began playing us against each other. Okay, let me pause here. It sounds to me that it was all good for Robert to be abusing some young girl, having sex with a young girl in front of you, and all this foolishness. You said nothing about it during 2005, not even the meeting that he had with her when he had sex with her in front of this woman, this author, in 2013, 2014. You all of a sudden have a problem with him and don't mind divulging all this information when he screwed you out of money. That's a big problem for me. Because if everything was good, if he was paying you right, I would not be sitting here reading this, and you would not be sitting here listening to me read this. Let me continue. Where am I? He would call me and yell at me over the phone and in person for having conversation with Devin or even being cordial with him. He wanted me to believe that Devin was trying to be the artist and that he wasn't really in it for him. Things got out of control. I went through the process of hiring a stylist. The first stylist that I brought in for an interview, he wanted her phone number and wanted to hire the second candidate for work. During this time, he was proposing nights with my 22-year-old niece and my best friend in her 30s. He was very aggressive with my niece, asked me to have her send pictures to his phone and call him, come by the studio, etc. She refused to do so. My best friend had zero interest and thought that it was very disrespectful. Robert began asking me to invite girls to the gym where he played basketball. My friends never wanted to come. They actually thought he was disgusting and were intimidated with his aggressive behavior off the court. The stylist ultimately hired for the job, Cash Howard, was harassed by Robert. She said on numerous occasions that he asked her for pictures and to not be afraid to be a little girl for daddy. Every girl calls him daddy. It was embarrassing. I hired her and it became a styling game of weed smoking and heavy use of alcohol. And then ultimately he began to play us against each other. I never saw Cash and Robert intimate. I saw text messages and she often spoke of their sexual phone conversations. She told me that he forced her to watch him have sex with his regular girls, Juice and Vanisha. This went on a few times in the lounge at Devin's house. Robert's employee slash uncle, Junebug, was very rude to me after he saw Robert yell and curse me out. Robert would say, "You're very smart, but you do stupid stuff." I'm sorry. I just have a problem with somebody who's illiterate calling somebody else stupid, but I digress. For example, if the guests would fly in at noon and arrive at their hotel and couldn't check in until 3 p.m., he would yell and curse at me and call me stupid and blame me for the hotel rules. This would happen if flights were delayed, if drivers weren't present at the carousel, if the Uber driver was a male and not a female. He would yell at me and curse me out in front of Junebug, and Junebug ultimately began to yell and curse at me as Robert did. They would have me running through crowds at shows to make sure the guests were always in his view at concerts and not near each other. He left the stage at a show once and cursed me out because one of the guests moved from one side of the stage to the other and he saw them close to each other. He said it was my fault. He did this in front of the staff. Junebug had me scared to do my job. He would make me feel as though I didn't work for Mr. Kelly, as he would call him, more so that I had worked for him. Robert would make Junebug the boss of everyone and still say, "Only do what I tell you to do." It was very confusing and a hostile environment. More girls became a priority. RKelly, an aspiring artist from Orlando, Joycelyn Savage, an aspiring artist from Atlanta. Judea Johnson, an aspiring model from Atlanta. Christy K.L. Lee, an aspiring artist from Texas, and others were all Robert's new teenage girls that I was constantly moving around, booking air, ground, and hotel, all with a debit card in my name from his personal Robert S. Kelly SunTrust bank account. These girls were so young and not travel savvy, as it was very difficult creatively moving them around. Robert never cared about the process or the cost. He wanted to make sure that they got to him as he would request. It was during a show date in Connecticut that everything took a turn for the worse. I mean, now things take a turn for the worse. I would have thought things took a turn for the worse when he screwed a child in front of you. That wasn't something that took a turn for the worse for this woman, huh? Okay. Robert asked me to bring in Joycelyn Savage, Azriel Clary, Christy Lee, and have them all stay on the casino property and take turns coming to the shows. At the final show, Robert asked me to get Azriel to him from the front of the stage to his dressing room. I escorted her back and left the room. He yelled at me an hour later as if something was wrong. I walked into the room and sat next to them both. He was laying on a huge ottoman and she was sitting next to him. We were discussing the show, and moments later, she leaned over and started giving him oral sex in front of me. It was disgusting. She's only 17. It was in that moment that I made a conscious decision to end this role. I didn't feel right hearing him moan to the enjoyment of a child giving him oral sex. He would also have her in the room straddling him in front of everyone. He thought it was sexy to do that. I was harassed later by Junebug, Linda, Joan, and the new tour manager, KG. They found issues with everything that I did after I had them ramped and comfortable in their seats. I was the biggest threat to everyone because I 100% had Robert's entire life in my hands. Even Robert thought that was too much control. They started playing alongside Robert with being rude. He did so much of the playing everyone against each other that he forgot that I had 4 condos in my name for him and his guests for the first year. I put 2 houses and every single utility in my name for him. These things went unnoticed, but still remained open items during the time that he wasn't paying me because he felt like A, I was being paid too much, and B, because Linda the bookkeeper, Linda and the bookkeeper, Joan, convinced him that I was improperly handling show dates and not negotiating bonuses, so money was being left on the table. Linda, Joan, and KG somehow figured out how to convince Robert that Devin and I no longer made sense. So they defamed our names, and Robert cut my salary, made me pay for Linda's mistakes, and ultimately played me against one of his friends who booked club dates for him. This guy, Reese McKinney, would pay me out of his commission from events for helping him on his side of the business. Robert saw that as double dipping. The $200 or $300 here and there just somehow didn't sit well with him. He was then convinced that I was showing favoritism to some of the agents after I delivered on his request to close the dates for his friends, and she has friends in quotes, that brought in an excess of $1.3 million in show dates. Robert has a strong pattern of creating fear and to not pay his debt to anyone. I would always get his approval on extremely costly flights and upscale hotels, but push back when I would ask for my own pay, all while I was renting condos, homes, and covering utilities all in my name. You dummy. I was disparaged by Linda, Joan, and KG. Robert ultimately lowered my responsibilities to focusing only on his guests and the homes, and it was grueling. All right, there you have it. That's an article. Again, it's a statement, not an article, rather. London on the Track's mother, Cheryl Mack, says R. Kelly made his oldest daughter table dance for him and his friends. Well, that was only a little blurb in all that I've just read. My goodness. I'm going to the chat real quick. Hello, Sassy. Hello, Elm City. Hey, Line. Hey, I don't know what else to say. I just thought that I would read that statement for all them niggas who don't like to read. There you go. All right. At this point in time, I'm done. I made my comments throughout reading this statement. I just got a problem with people seeing somebody like Precious being manipulated, physically abused. You sitting there and this grown ass man, because in 2005 he was like 38, so he's gonna screw this young chick in front of you. You don't raise red flags or SOS, burn a fire. You don't say nothing until after you realize how manipulative this man is, and you got all these things in your name for him, and he ain't trying to pay you your money. Now you want to tell everything you know involving sex with children, sex with underage girls. That's what I have a problem with. That's what I have a problem with. It's 2018. How come we didn't hear about this in 2013, 2014 when he reconnected with Precious? Because in this statement, she says that Precious eventually sued R. Kelly. She collected semen in her undergarments and the bed sheets in the hotel and sued him. And R. Kelly at one point went to the author of this statement and said, locate Precious for me. Now it's 2013, 2014, and this is the time that he has sex with this person in front of the author of this statement. 2013, 2014. Don't we think this statement should have been put out back then, 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago? But again, only when your money is fucked up. Only when, you notice how much a manipulative individual R. Kelly is, how he played you against all these other people, how these other people were rude and disrespectful and ultimately turned on you. Now you want to tell all you know. Now you want to look like a savior and you care about what he does to women and females and underage girls. But when you sat there and actually witnessed what he did 4 or 5 years ago, you didn't say shit. To quote a very popular YouTuber who said to me about a month ago, I hate people because people are stupid. I get that. I get it now. I get that statement. I can see how somebody can hate people because people are stupid. There's a whole lot of people that got it in for R. Kelly. And I made a video a couple of months ago, and it's damn near 3,000 views for some reason. I don't know why, but the title is something to the effect that, R. Kelly may not be long for this world or something like that. And I talked about how, I think he's a fuck nigga that does fuck nigga shit. And eventually somebody's going to murder him. And it'll probably be one of those bitches in his harem. One of them are going to go bonkers and they're probably going to kill his ass. It'll probably turn out to be one of those whodunit things. It could be one of the bonkered bitches. It could be a former business associate. We see what happened a few months ago. His best friend, I can't remember his name, but when I heard his name, I knew he had been working with R. Kelly for at least 25, 30 years. Because I remember always hearing his name around R. Kelly, whether I was reading articles or whether I heard R. Kelly shout him out in a record or something. And this guy that has worked with R. Kelly over 25, 30 years was the one that had emptied out 2 of his mansions here in Atlanta. And why did he do that? Of course, it was over money. He felt that R. Kelly owed him. And now we're reading this statement, another person who feels R. Kelly owes her money. And I don't think those are the only 2. So at R. Kelly's demise, it will be one of those whodunit mysteries. Was it hoe number 1? Was it baby girl number 2? Was it business partner number 3? Okay, so you find out who did it. What did they murder him with? Candlestick, gun, bat? Who knows? But I can tell you this, when it's all said and done, it's just not going to end well. It seems like R. Kelly done screwed over a lot of people. And people just coming for him now. It ain't got nothing to do with people being haters. A hater to me is someone who has hate for an individual, not because they've done anything to said hater. They hate a particular individual because of their success or whatever, their popularity, their talent, whatever the case may be. That's what a hater is to me. I don't think people who you have deliberately wronged, who you have cheated out of money, who you have abused sexually or physically or mentally or emotionally, those are not haters. Don't get it twisted. Haters are people just hate you for who you are, what you have, what you accomplished, your status in life or whatever. Those are haters. But when you go around doing fuck shit because you a fuck nigga to a whole bunch of people and they then become angry with you, those are not haters. Those are people who are seeking revenge. Every dog has his day. I'll keep on watching and I will keep you all posted on whatever I come across concerning R. Kelly. I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it in every video that I make concerning R. Kelly. I don't give a damn what this man does with adult women, whether they are 19, 25, or 30. I don't care if these adult women want to screw him in front of other people. I don't care if these adult women want to screw each other in front of him. I don't care if these adult women want to take their finger and shove it up his R. Kelly butt. I don't give a damn. As long as they are not underage, they're not children. I'll say it again. When the videotape came out and we clearly saw R. Kelly piss on a 15-year-old child, there was no such outrage as what we're seeing today. None. There was no information coming out. Well, there was some information coming out back then, but eventually it all died down. And whatever commentary that people had, they tended to blame the 15-year-old child and say she was a fast little hoe. I even called in to Wendy Williams and checked her on that, because she was the first one I heard refer to the 15-year-old child getting pissed on by a grown-ass man as a fast little hoe. Now, what is this? 16 years later, people want to say that he's in the wrong now, but back then he wasn't in the wrong. The child was in the wrong. People are stupid. I'm not to the point where the YouTuber is when she said she hates people because people are stupid. I'll just go with people are stupid. I'm not to the point where I hate people, but if I keep thinking about people long enough, I'll probably get there. Because this situation concerning R. Kelly is really pissing me off. But I'll keep on watching this situation and see what else generates and what else is going down with him. Whatever the case may be, hey, let's just watch it play out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I shall catch you later. Ciao.